from the crest of Armana, the heights of Sinai, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's den and the leopard-haunted hills. You've stolen my heart, my sister, my bride, with one glance of your eyes, one jewel of your necklace. Like a lily among the thorns, is my darling among the daughters. Like a lily among the thorns, is my darling among the others. Don't go away, love, till it wants to arise. Come with me from the Lebanon, from the crest of Armana, the heights of Sinai, the summits of Hermon.
Can't hear you in Zoom, sir.
I was muted. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yes.
How come it feels like we haven't done this? I say this every week, but it feels like we haven't done this in weeks. But I'm pushing buttons. Sorry about that. Alan McGuire with your Exodus to Ingathering Monday night devotional. We are in week 46. It's called At the Base of Mount Sinai. What else? What else we got going on? Well, here's our social media. Here's our little intro that we do every week. If you're new, welcome. There's a bunch of people in here that have been here a while that'll be happy to walk you through things. You saw Alyssa. She's more than willing to help you. If you're on Zoom, you can chat with her. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, just let Alyssa know that you need help or something, and she'll be... Is that still true, Alyssa? You haven't had a baby yet?
No. Not yet.
So you have to have a baby between like Tuesday and Tuesday and Saturday so that you'll be available on Monday night, right?
Come back on Monday.
Something like that?
I'll do my best.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All right. We have a store. Acacia, what's it called? Oh, no, here's that lower third. I'm just moving on by. Oh, speaking of, see that calendar? We should have that calendar. I'm going to go proof the cover tomorrow. So we should have calendars available for you to purchase by the end of the week, which will give you plenty of time for Hanukkah gifts. Yeah. Email info@. You can talk to us there. If you need to get a hold of us real soon, send one to feedback, and that's one that Alyssa and I both manage, so that it'll be faster. I think you'll get a faster response or something like that. Tomorrow morning, you can watch the Chameleon Church Show. It's a show we do every Tuesday morning, 8:45 a.m. Central, and we talk about all sorts of things. Actually don't know what we're going to talk about tomorrow. We never actually know it's very rarely that we even know what we're going to talk about, but somehow God shows up. That's always probably the coolest thing about it, and we're able to go from there. That's the Chameleon Church Show on Tuesdays. You're watching the Exodus to Ingathering Monday night devotional. All right. As you can tell, we've been working on getting things more to where I want them. Spencer, is that better? This morning, Spencer was critiquing my 2-minute warning with my background. Yeah. We are in week 46 at the base of Mount Sinai. Unless you have a need or a prayer request or something like that, I am ready to go. What do you guys think? You guys ready? All right. Here we go. Week 46, at the base of Mount Sinai. I've got a couple slides here. Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and ye shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. I think that bears repeating. Listen to the caveat there. Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That is, man, I mean, that alone, we could sit on that for the rest of our lives and unpack that. In order to be a nation of kings and priests, or a nation of priests holy unto him, his treasured possession, you have to obey his voice and keep his covenant. That's the entrance fee right there. That's what it's going to cost you. And I guarantee you that obeying his voice and keeping his covenant will cost you your life. Because in order for that covenant to be, in order for the bridge to link us and him, that covenant once and for all, Jesus of Nazareth, it cost him his life. So it will cost you your life in order to breach that chasm, because Messiah is that bridge, see? It's going to cost you your life, and it's absolutely worth it. I mean, we'll wait for gallery mode, the Q&A, but it is absolutely worth it. Let me let Dave in here. It's man. Now, since the week this is originally for was the Torah portion includes the account of Mount Sinai, we are going to do a little quick refresher, okay? I don't think you guys really will mind that. In Exodus 19, we see that Moses and all of Israel have assembled before the living God per his instructions at the base of Mount Sinai. This is when and where God established his instructions in written form for those that would call upon his name. His instructions for mankind, for those that make the voluntary decision to serve him. His covenant instructions for those who call themselves believers. In essence, these instructions are the keys of blessing for you as a Christian, a believer, the wedding vows, if you will, between the bridegroom and his bride. The vows his bride voluntarily makes covenant with to be known as his. These are the instructions that set you apart from the rest. The covenant instructions, the good works we were created for in Messiah to do. The works prepared for us in advance. The covenants that make him your God and you his people, a nation of kings and priests. I doubt any of you are here without an actual book, but we just kind of quoted Ephesians 2:10 and Exodus 24. That was weird. Did you guys hear that? I heard there's something behind me. All right. Now, this was the reason they had traveled. Israel had traveled these difficult and endless 40 some odd days from Egypt to Sinai to meet up with God. Remember, I kind of touched on it a little bit on this, but remember how Moses first initiated his dialogue with Pharaoh. He was asking Pharaoh to let him go out into the desert for 3 weeks so that they could go sacrifice to their God. Remember that? Well, this is essentially, he wasn't really lying, because this is essentially what it is that they're here to do. At Mount Sinai, they're there to make this covenant relationship, this pact. And it's been some 40 some odd days to get from Egypt to this mount. 3 days later, after arriving, there was a blast from a shofar summoning Israel to Mount Sinai, where there was smoke, fire, and earthquakes, while the shofar's blast grew louder and louder. There's my shofar right there. And it wasn't being blown by a human being. When God finally spoke, it sounded like thunder. They were terrified and stood a long way off. And then I think we should have a verse here. Look at that. Moses. Nope. I guess I thought we had that. Moses, you speak to us. Moses, you speak to us and we'll listen, but not God. Don't let him speak to us or we'll die. That was the consensus. That was the psychology behind all this. This is how they were thinking. They were terrified, flashings of lightning, earthquake. Somebody said it was like a rock show, you know. There's this major thing going on, and God's voice, he starts speaking from the fire and the smoke and the lightning, and there's thunder, and it terrified them. Absolutely terrified them. And they told Moses, you speak to us and we'll listen. We don't want to hear from God or we'll die. It's a format that has carried over to mankind when it comes to the actual voice of God. Humans do things so as not to be able to directly hear from God themselves. would rather have a liaison like a pastor or an elder, a parent, a spouse, anything but having to do the work to have a personal relationship with Father God where it's just you and him, and it's on you to not only be able to hear his voice, right? You have to get to the point where you're trained and equipped and aligned and mature enough to be able to hear his voice and discern that it's his voice and not your own or a demon's, right? There's a lot of work there. It's a lot easier to just preach that, God doesn't speak anymore. He doesn't speak these days like he used to. He doesn't do that anymore. That's not really how he does things anymore. And you can't really know his voice, and it's a lot easier to preach that that's been done away with than it is to do the work of aligning yourself and positioning yourself in order to be able to actually hear the voice of God, the discernible voice of God. To remember how we talked about it takes maturity to be able to discern. It's a lot easier to just say no than to earn the gift of discernment, to be able to discern his voice and then actually do it and walk in it. I mean, the steps that I just described, unfortunately, the majority of humans will never, ever accomplish any of that. And it's absolutely horrific. And it's not because of God. It's because of humans. It's because of how we are. That long-standing identifiable fear as a people was now keeping them from the very reason God delivered them from Egypt. Covenant relationship. Instead of desiring that personal relationship with Adonai, the relationship he also desired for them, it's the relationship he established in the garden with Adam. A relationship that requires obeying his voice and keeping his covenants. Adam, all this is yours. Just don't eat from that tree. They balked out of fear and opted for Moses to be their mediator. This gripping and debilitating fear, their identity, was keeping Israel from wanting to hear his voice, lest we die. And it would continue to stand in the way of their relational obedience to God. In addition, this same fear and stubbornness would cause them to reject his prophets as well, and consequently, Messiah. I am going to read that again because there is so much. This applies to all of us because this defines so much of humanity. And even as believers, we still do this. I mean, even as a mature believer that bears fruit, we can still find ourselves doing this in little things, right? Because it's further up and further in. That long-standing identifiable fear as a people was now keeping Israel from the very reason God delivered them from Egypt. Covenant relationship. He delivered them for this very reason. Instead of desiring that personal relationship with Adonai, the relationship he also desired for them, a relationship that requires obeying his voice and keeping his covenants, they balked out of fear and opted for Moses to be their mediator. They lost out on this blessing. This gripping and debilitating fear, their identity, was keeping Israel from wanting to hear his voice, lest we die. And it would continue to stand in the way of their relational obedience to God. Man. In addition, this same fear and stubbornness would cause them to reject his prophets as well, and consequently, Messiah. As God set out the parameters of the covenant and his promises of their eventual and successful possession of the land of Canaan, Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was manifest. In Exodus 24, Moses tells Israel everything Adonai spoke, including his rules, and to that, the entire assembly responded with a resounding Naaseh v'nishma. All these words and rulings that Adonai has spoken, we will do. We will hear and understand. Then, right, and because they did that, they made covenant. They made a deal. We hear what you're saying, we understand what you're saying, and we will do it. And then 40 years later, he's got them on two mounts right before he died, and he has them do the same thing. They had him swear against heaven and earth that they would keep the covenant. And they did on behalf of mankind. That's why Jesus said, this is a standing covenant until heaven and earth pass away. Then Moses wrote down all that Adonai had spoken. An altar was built and 12 pillars representing the 12 tribes were erected. Burnt offerings and peace offerings were made. You can find that in the Feast Unlocked book. All right, Exodus 32. After Moses was up on Mount Sinai with God for 40 days, Israel went to Aaron saying, we don't know what has become of this man, Moses. Make us a God that will lead us. Aaron had all of Israel bring him the gold earrings worn by their wives, sons, and daughters, that he then took and fashioned it into a golden statue of a god that resembled a calf. Israel shouted, Israel, here is your God who brought you out of Egypt. Aaron then built an altar and proclaimed a feast day in God's honor for the following day. What's wrong with that? As Christians, we do that all the time, at least a couple times a year. The next day, the assembly rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and also brought along friendship offerings. They ate and drank and then danced wildly in front of their new golden god. Meanwhile, at some higher altitude, the Lord says to Moses, go, your people that you brought out of Egypt have corrupted themselves. Moses is thinking, whoa, wait, what? My people that I brought out? That's right. Your people that you brought out of Egypt have corrupted themselves. That's the common way most translations put it. Have perverted themselves is a close second. Apparently, you just can't decide to make up your own articles of celebration. Choose your own dates and times and stamp in God's honor for it to be okay with him. Go figure. I'll just stop now before I say something blatantly obvious. And I will say something blatantly obvious in a few minutes here. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. What a smack. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now, therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation of you. Oh, wow. He's not kidding. He's serious. He's using words like burning hot wrath and talking about consuming them and starting over with Moses, just Moses, and making a great nation out of him. In true form, Moses intercedes, asking God to forgive Israel. But it's how he intercedes that's amazing. Moses brings up Egypt and how God used power and a mighty hand to deliver them. Why should he be so angry with Israel? Why give the Egyptians satisfaction, a reason to ridicule him by saying that he did bring them out to the desert to kill them? Now, as Moses and Joshua came down the mountain and approached the camp, they saw the golden calf and the people dancing. Moses, I always think of, was it the second Matrix when they're in Zion in the caves and they're dancing the night before they go to war? That's what I think of. A lot of dreadlocks. Moses was burning with so much anger that he threw the 2 tablets with the 10 commandments that had been written with the finger of God, breaking them into pieces at the base of Mount Sinai. Moses takes down the golden calf, burns it in the fire, grinds it into powder, pours it into water, and makes every Israeli drink it. The discourse that follows between Moses and Aaron, sadly, is classic denial. I can't even tell you how often I've literally have had this crass conversation with people. Moses is asking his brother, what did these people do to you that you led them into such great sin? Do not be angry, my lord, Aaron answered. You know how prone these people are to evil. They said to me, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. So I told them, whoever has any gold jewelry, take it off. Then they gave me the gold. I simply threw it into the fire and it was like magic. Out came this calf. Moses saw that the people were running wild and that Aaron had let them get out of control. And so so become a laughing stock to their enemies. Don't be a laughing stock to your enemies. It misrepresents God because of godless acts. Then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. Now, all the Levites answered the call. The same Levites that will turn on him, that will turn on Moses in the not so distant future under Korah. Moses instructs the Levites that God would have them go throughout the camp, killing their brother, friend, and neighbor with the sword. And 3,000 people died that day. Also on that day, for standing against their own sons and brothers, the Levites were set apart for Adonai. But it wasn't over. Because of what they did with the calf that Aaron made, God struck the people with a plague. Here's some takeaways. Mount Sinai is the game changer. By this time, Israel should have understood and been in alignment. Do not mess with God. Know who you are and who you are in Him. Stand firm, no matter what. No matter what. It doesn't matter if you get fired from your job. It doesn't matter if you don't have any money. It doesn't matter if your marriage partner leaves you. Nothing matters more importantly than your standing firm. And you would not believe the things I have heard people use as an excuse so as not to stand firm. I'm sick. I have cancer. I'm going to die. And they decide I'm not going to stand firm. You know, my wife had an affair with my brother, and they decide they're not going to stand firm. My husband had an affair with my sister. They just lose their minds, and they're just, you know. I lost my job. I have $35,000 in debt. I'm going to lose my house. I've got 90 days, or they're going to foreclose on my home. What am I going to do? Where am I going to live? How am I going to eat? And they use that as an excuse, as a good excuse. See, these are all rational excuses to the human rationale. This all makes sense. Makes perfect sense. I mean, wouldn't you lose your mind too, Alan, if any of those things happened? No matter what, you stand firm. Do not participate with unsanctioned and man-made holy days. Times, dates, or seasons. They're not godly. Do not subject yourself to idolatry, false and or pagan worship, spiritual adultery. See, there's people out there that would say, Alan, you can't equate Christmas and Easter to what they did with this golden calf. They were actually worshiping a golden calf. I understand that. I know that. As soon as we understand that we have golden calves in our lives that we need to burn in the fire to get rid of, the easier and the sooner we'll be able to actually walk in obedience. Keep your earrings. Don't give them away. And guard closely your testimony and witness so as not to become a laughingstock due to your disobedience. Nothing looks worse than a disobedient believer exposing themselves or being exposed in the street, social media, whatever. Nothing is more damaging than ruining your testimony, ruining your witness. It's almost impossible to recover from that. Be a Levite and on the side of God by taking the sword of the Spirit, the word of God, to your brothers, sons, friends, and neighbors. Love them into a right relationship with Jesus. Did I miss anything? Well, then we'll catch on the flip side. We'll be right back. Hello. Hello, everybody. Trying to get everybody in here. Is everybody in here? Everybody's looking good. So, evening. Adam Cantrell from Texas on YouTube says, evening. He's got his little do-what thing going on over there. Covenants. Covenant. Walking in covenant. Aligning yourself with covenant. Very, very important. All right, who would like to start off? Well, I know what's going to happen. Is he even here? He's not here. Oh, man.
Yes, I am.
Oh yeah, there you are. I'm sorry, gotta get used to that new pick. What's going on, man?
What up, G?
What up?
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yes.
From Thailand.
Oh,
So
yeah.
anyway,
You're still there. How long are you going to be there for?
February 15th or something like that.
Oh,
12th,
wow.
I think.
You're there for a little while.
Yeah, unless they kick us out.
Is there a possibility of that?
I'm not going to go into that right now.
Oh, okay. That's
I will say this.
when you ask
I
a loaded
spoke to
question, when you ask a loaded question and you don't know it's loaded.
Boom chakalaka. I will say this. I have a friend who
Jesus.
has a oh well yeah that's okay. I'm done now. Goodbye.
We can all go home now.
That's it. You pretty much summarized it.
Oh man.
So seriously though, where do we start? And then my answer came like a fire flood, which is like my favoriteest word in the whole wide world right now. Fire flood.
Fire flood.
Yeah, I just love that word. It washes over me.
Like a fire flood.
Flood. So where do we start? Back in the beginning, and maybe we should repeat this process often. I think somebody already had an idea for that, right?
Something.
Yeah.
A little.
And then I see myself as a child in a sandbox with the tools, the commands, and the Moedim to worship Adonai and not build my own God from sand.
It's good.
So I think it's biblical too, in that, you know, what we build out of sand is nothing, and it's going to go away. It's going to erode. And I mean, I'm not taking credit for this. This all came from God and study. It's just our stuff that we create is so worthless if he's not involved, and we don't give him 110% credit for it. It's worthless. It's going to be washed away by the fire flood.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts this morning, and thank you for the introduction and the scripture and being there, and we love you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. We all love you as well. So what else? Who's up? Ooh, it's going to be a short one tonight. Well, all right then. I'm good.
It's Monday.
Hey, Alan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
What's
No
happening?
snow. No snow, saw the moon, so I'm good.
There you go. How's your Monday?
It's Monday.
Because it's Monday.
It's been a good Monday.
Man, I had a crazy week last week.
You did. I saw that. I was praying for you
Thank you.
and your
We're
family. That's just too much for anyone.
it was a bit much. I'm excited we get to Go check out the covers. Make sure the covers are right, and then we should have calendars by the end of the week. So that'll be better than last week.
Yes, it will.
A little bit more proactive.
That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. So you saw the moon.
I did.
Nice.
I did. I was looking at this differently, maybe, and not so differently, but and it said you're talking about, they put the calf together, and it miraculously appeared. That's like straight out of that's just craziness.
I know, right?
But, we essentially have done what they did as a country, as a people, as a community.
Yeah.
And we have become the laughing stock of the world because of it, because we let our faith in God as a country go. And it's really sad. And, we just have to regroup and regather and get better equipped. And I was reading, was it Jonathan Cahn? Something, it's an audiobook. I'm also getting a book about the gods that we're dealing with, that are taking over our children and all the rest of it.
Right.
It's just, there's nothing new about anything that's going on. It's the same thing. Back in the Old Testament, and I went to church on Sunday, and I just have to sit and pray because I get a person that tells me all about grace, but doesn't tell me about grace, and then basically says that the Old Testament law has been done away with. And I'm like, and yeah. So I come here on Monday night, and then I listen. I can't listen to it live on Tuesday, but it just renews my spirit that there's people that really know the living God and that are trying with all of their heart, mind, soul, and body to do the correct things and to follow the covenant that God put before us.
Yeah.
Because it keeps us alive, it keeps us well, it keeps us moving forward. It gives us the ability to stand. How else are you going to stand if you don't know what your foundation is?
Right.
And that to me is what the Old Testament is all about. It's like these people said, "Oh, you brought us out into the desert to let us die." And I'm like, why would somebody bring them out into the desert to let them die? He took them with all the jewels and wealth of Egypt and got them the hell out of there. And then, I'm just going to let you die in the desert. Right. That doesn't even make common sense, but, because they had that mob mentality going on, that's what they believed. And it was just craziness. So, and I think, go ahead.
And I've said this before, everything Israel says and does, and there's Gentiles among them as well, but everything they say and do is within earshot. Is that the term? And,
earshot.
And visible from God, because God's like right there. He's in the camp as well. He's
walking through their camp because he tells them not to poop in their camp to go out because I don't want to walk through your stuff.
Exactly.
So he's there.
He is so there, and they're doing these things right there in front of them.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So and even though we don't have the God, we don't have God right here in front of us. We have the Holy Spirit within us. We saw the work of Yeshua Messiah on the cross and all the rest of it. And we have all the testimony. We have everything, but we still do the same things.
It's true.
And sadly enough, we are human. But hopefully, if you're more equipped, you learn more and you do less of the non-covenant stuff. And it's like I told my friend, the youth pastor at this church, I said, I will see you in January because I won't be there during the holiday because I'm not. They already put one Christmas tree up in the lobby, and I'm like, no. No, not happening.
Yeah. When, we were, before moving to Utah, it's been really difficult here in Utah finding a place to go to on a regular basis. But we're the type of people, we go to church on a regular weekly basis. And, but we would disappear for 2 or 3 weeks around Christmas just because it's just too much,
Yeah. And he was like, okay with it. Also, I think that I'm going to give them I'll talk to you later about this, but I want to get some books from you because I would like to give them as a Hanukkah gift to the church, because I think there's some people there that would really benefit.
Yeah.
They would be open to it. There will be some people that won't be. That's fine too. I don't care. But at least the book will be in hands, and and if they don't use it, it'll get into someone else's hands who might use it. So that's going to be my Hanukkah gift to my local church.
Well, that's cool. Appreciate you thinking of us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
No, thank you.
I think of you guys. I think of all of you. That you're always on my mind, in my prayers, because it's important to me to have a group of people like-minded to interact with, even though we're not in person, except for maybe once or twice a year whenever we can all get together.
Right.
We still have the Holy Spirit amongst us, so I think it's important.
I think so too. I'm in agreement with you. Appreciate your support. Appreciate your prayers. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Okay, well, I'm going to go eat some leftovers from Thanksgiving with my wife.
I have a question.
Well, hello.
Hello.
What's happening?
Hey.
Hey.
It's after the Turkey Day.
I like Turkey Day. That's one of my favorite. I love the traditional Thanksgiving meal. I just love it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we had ours yesterday, not Thursday. So we have fresh leftovers ready to go.
Yeah, my husband's in hospitality, and so he doesn't get those days off, the holidays off. Yeah. So we always have Thanksgiving and so forth with the family like a month or two later. Anyway, my question.
Yes.
This is so loaded, all of this. I've been looking at it for a couple of days and thinking, gosh, I've got to tell family members exactly the way this is worded. Because
I know, right? It's
very,
crazy.
very good.
Thank you.
It's very, very good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's my best Elvis. That's all I got.
You brought up the question that you've heard. You can't equate Christmas and Easter with idol worship. How would you answer
Sure you
that
can.
in a nice way, Alan?
I do all the time. I equate it all the time. What was your question?
How do you answer that? Be nice.
Right. I will. I'll be nice. So here's the thing. I was not raised in a Christian home. I was not raised in a religious home. We did Christmas like everybody else. We did it hard, man. I mean, we had some crazy Christmases. We would rake it in as kids during Christmas because we had like 3 or 4 different places we would go just on Christmas Eve, and just, oh my gosh, and then gifts the next morning. And so I was all about Christmas. I loved Christmas.
Yeah, me too.
I actually wrote a blog about it years and years and years ago. It's still out there and available. I should probably share it. I will.
Yeah, please. That would be great.
But I explain how much, why I loved it so much. It was one of the main reasons why I loved it so much was it was my dad. So I was raised by a Lithuanian stepfather, and it was this is the nicest time. This was when he was the nicest to us all year long.
Yeah.
It was not nice. It was not nice. It was not it wasn't a stable, good, emotionally stable place to live or grow up. And this was he would smile. I could approach him. I could talk with him. I could, he was okay for almost, 10 days to 2 weeks around that period of time.
Wow.
So I know that's, I'm 58. I've had plenty of, I've got grown children. I'm a grandfather. I've had plenty of time to look back and really assess it. And besides, all the Christmas stuff, right? it was when he was the nicest, and that's what that's what I needed. Then I'm sent away because they didn't know how to manage me. I'm sent away to a foreign land to live with a missionary uncle, non-LDS. I live in Utah. You have to say that. And his church. He was a presiding elder of the church that he ran. They didn't do Christmas. They didn't do Easter. They didn't know the Torah. They didn't do the Torah. The closest thing they ever got to Torah, something happened in 1982 that I've never really, I don't talk about it very much. Not like this. I talk about it, but there was a coup d'etat, and the guy that was put into the presidency was an elder at our church, and so this is the first time there's a born-again, spirit-filled Christian in charge of a country, a Catholic country no less. So all these Christians came to see how they did it, because first time in modern times that this has ever happened. And I remember them doing Hebraic dance because Pat Robinson was there or something like that. Now to answer your question. So I got saved in January of 1980. That's a long time ago. And they didn't celebrate Christmas. So my whole Christianity, from the very beginning of my Christianity, was we don't do Christmas because it's pagan. We don't do Easter because it's pagan. But they didn't have the replacement for it like we offer. Hanukkah, Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, right?
Right.
So, and they didn't know that. They didn't have that revelation. So we did a version of it, kind of like, sort of, when I got back to the States. But then when we started doing this Torah stuff, here's what we did do, and I explain this in the book. We would have, it was essentially Thanksgiving on Christmas Day, and we would invite all these a lot of single Christians in Texas, because they have the Baptist Theological Seminary there. So there's a lot of people at the church we used to go to that would go to that seminary that did not have family. And to them, it was a really difficult time for them because it's that type of time of year and they didn't have any family around. So we would throw this huge bash and invite all these people over to our house, and we would serve them. And we'd have like a white elephant thing. And we were very articulate on how we did not believe in Christmas and da-da-da-da. You guys do, and we're here to serve you because, right? It was a ministry thing that we did. We had no tree or nothing like that. And we would explain why we don't do Christmas. So here's what I tell people. Here's what I tell Christians. Because, again, you have to remember, I write these books not for Messianics and not for Torah-observant Gentiles. Those are two different things. There's an error thinking that, now that I'm observing Torah, I'm a Messianic. No, you're not, because you're not Jewish. So I don't write my books I don't even do this, live streaming, for Torah-observant Gentiles or Messianic Christians. I do this for Christians that don't necessarily understand or know what we're talking about, or they're like on the fringes of maybe taking a peek over the fence to see what's going on because something's making sense. There's a disconnect, and there might be something to what we're talking about. So that's why I write the way I write. I am writing to Christians about these things that we believe in. And so here's what I tell Christians. I don't care if you observe Christmas. I don't care if you observe Easter. I don't care if you do any of that stuff. Knock yourself out. It's not my problem. But don't you think that you should probably be doing what God did tell you to observe in Leviticus 23? Right? I mean, if you're gonna observe man-made holy days, if you're gonna observe man-made observances that have nothing to do with the biblical narrative, that represent Jesus, that honor God. What does it say here? They established a holiday. What's the terminology here? Let me see if I can find it real quick.
You just can't decide to make up your own articles of celebration, choose your own dates and times, and stamp in God's honor.
Yeah.
That's what you wrote in the book. Yeah.
Right. A paragraph before that, when it talks about what Aaron is actually doing.
Oh, yeah. He built an altar and proclaimed a feast day in God's honor for
Right.
the following day.
What's
wrong
he
with that, you
proclaimed
ask?
a feast day in God's honor. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if you're going to proclaim a feast day in God's honor, that's what the Mass of Christ is. That's what Easter is, because it's not in the biblical narrative. It's not even in the instruction. It's not in the scriptures. It's not in the Tanakh. It's not in the Torah. It's a completely religious, established, secular thing, because it's not biblical.
Right.
Right? If you're going to do that, knock yourself out, have fun, whatever, but don't you think you should at least look at or consider, strongly consider, what it is that God did tell you to establish? And then if they go, well, I'm not Jewish. Well, are you a Roman Catholic? No. Well, then what the hell are you doing Easter in the Mass of Christ then for? If you're going to do the Mass of Christ and you're not a Roman Catholic, explain to me how that's different than doing something you think is Jewish. Because it's not Jewish, it's godly, and it's biblical, which is why we start the feast book with, these are my feasts, say the Lord. They're not Jewish holidays. Christianity, and it's part of the replacement theology, it's part of the anti-Semitism in this church, they will say, I don't do Hanukkah, I don't do Passover, because I'm not Jewish. Well, are you a Roman Catholic? Are you Italian? Are you Greek Orthodox? Are you even Greek? No. Well, then why are you doing their things? See, it's just preconditioning. So that's what I tell people. You make them look stupid, because that's what they are. They are. You have to be completely stupid to buy into the narrative. For the most part, any mass accepted narrative is lacking the intellect or the discretionary viewpoint. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So
they're just not educated, and they don't care to be.
Right. So if you're going to do Christmas and Easter, knock yourself out. But you should. But know now that God has established holidays. They're not Jewish. They're His, and they're found in Leviticus 23. And they're not only are they His holy days, but they all point to Messiah. They all speak of Messiah, which is why we wrote the way we wrote the book, the way we wrote it. And they're not only that, but in the Hebrew, he calls them holy rehearsals. Holy rehearsals for what? Well, then I usually jump to Passover and say, oh, look, in the red letters, Jesus said there's a Passover in your future, the wedding feast of the Lamb, and you have no idea what it is we're talking about. So you're going to be that guy. You're going to be standing around outside going, huh? Like the bear in Narnia who's sucking on his paw. I don't understand, right? You don't want to be that guy. You want to know what's going on. You want to know why you're not allowed up to Mount Zion to worship Him during the millennium reign. Well, because you eat abominable things that we try to tell you about that you said it was okay to eat. You see what I'm saying? See,
yes.
Again, if you're gonna believe Isaiah 52, you have to believe the rest of Isaiah. So that's where I usually start. I usually start with, hey, I don't care if that's between you and the devil, like literally. And they all, ha ha ha, And then I'm like, but you should at least look into what God actually told you to do. I mean, don't you think that's more important than what man tells you to do? And then eventually you get to Mark 7 when Jesus says, your traditions, your religious traditions literally make the scriptures null and void. Leviticus 23 is the scripture, and the scripture says X, Y, Z. You're doing Christmas and Easter makes Leviticus 23 null and void. Just like the Pharisees. And then I usually give them that look.
Yeah.
And it goes different ways. It depends. I've had people say, you're trying to keep me from heaven. I don't have that type of power or authority. I'm flattered that you think I do, but no. What I'm telling you isn't me trying to keep you out of heaven.
I shocked a lovely man last
opposite.
night.
What's that?
I shocked a lovely person last night. We were sitting around a table, all discussing, having dinner at a restaurant, and this very wonderful, nice Christian brother and I were talking, and we were discussing food. And of course, I told him, I'm not going to have the bacon and blah, blah, blah. And I just said it offhand. I didn't say it like trying to get him to understand anything. And he kind of looked at me like, he goes, "You mean like it says in the Bible not to eat pork?" And there we go. We started discussing it, and he just looked at me aghast, but he smiled, and I can bet there's going to be a second conversation. So I wanted to just get a little more of your feedback on that. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And you know how it says that Peter ate with Gentiles? I ate with Gentiles all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I quoted, what you said, Isaiah 50, what was it, 55 and 65 and 66.
Yeah.
It's actually that which you explained at one point somewhere along the line of my education here that I went, oh, okay, I'm going to read that. And then I went and read it, and the Spirit convicted me, and that's why I stopped.
Oh, wow. Well,
I mean, in Cuba, the Cuban food, the big, huge celebration is pork. Everything is pork, and I love it. It's delicious.
Everything's pork everywhere. I mean, if you're a Baptist, pork. If you're a Mormon, pork. If you're Latin, pork. It's everywhere.
That's an interesting thing that Satan put together in the world.
It's brilliant. It really is a brilliant. I mean, I've Christians call it God's meat candy.
Anyway, I stopped. And,
what's that?
It's changed my life.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you.
I stopped. Yeah.
I'm glad we could be a helping hand there.
Oh, definitely equipping. Oh, yes.
That's awesome. The lovely Alyssa has posted the link to the blog post that I mentioned. How old is that thing?
Well, thank you.
It's got to be.
Thank you, Alyssa.
It was 2010, Alan.
Oh, wow. I started that blog when I was working at IBM. It's like 2001 or something. It's weird. But it's there. Thank you for chatting with us. Appreciate that.
I was just standing back waiting.
What?
I was just standing back waiting.
Waiting for what?
Let other people have an opportunity to talk.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't. You say that as if I had addressed you.
Oh, you didn't.
Are you feeling sorry for yourself?
Yeah,
Are you feeling bad because I didn't go, "Hey, Jason, what's up, buddy?"
Feeling diminished. I need to have like a standard opening, like
our brother. Like our brother Dougie.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, you've got a whole week to come up with your own routine.
All right, I'll get to work on that.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe have a video opening. I feed through this.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, like a wrestler coming down with smoke and music and some sort of theme song. Boom! Here comes the boom. Apparently, 21,000 people have made reels with that song. For some reason, I was told I don't know. All right, Jason, you can talk now.
Okay.
Please talk to us, Jason.
All right. Well, I don't want to hang up too early here.
Did you have like a rough weekend? Do you need a hug?
No,
Hold me.
I'll be okay. I'll be okay. It has been an interesting couple of weeks, but I'm here. I'm enjoying this time that we get together once a week. Unless you cancel it, of course, then I am sad. But I'm very very glad to be here. But
You're freaking me out, dude.
there's a lot in this passage. I think you call out an excellent set of things around this, but this week, and unfortunately I've not had a chance to review the lesson before tonight, but this week was a lot of stuff about covenant and coming up and talking to people about not only understanding what the feasts are and what the importance is, but understanding the nature of covenant and how that. If we don't understand that, we really don't have a grasp of Messiah and his mission. We don't have an understanding of what he has done from the beginning all the way through to orchestrate this. We don't realize that he was going to destroy even the tribe of Judah, which he had appointed to bring forth Messiah. I mean, that was big. And his drawing that intercession out of Moses is huge. And I think there are significant lessons in that we have to understand as people who stand in the gap, as people who are intercessors, as people who are moving in giftings, so that we have a clear path to really partner in the work he's doing through us. I mean, to know the nature of covenant, and to know, and I really hope we get into that more in this free-form path we go on next, that, you know, maybe that's the genesis of, you know, the third book.
Well,
Or
the next one's
second-
called
the
Covenant
second-
Culture.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think I'm excited to see what that brings forth and gives
so am
us
I.
points to discuss. One of these days, we got several great chapters so far,
Yeah.
but I think that's really the entry point to get people forget the dietary laws. I'm not saying forget them. I'm saying that that's not the entry point. The entry point is getting them to understand the nature of that covenant that he made, and how Israel said, yeah, we'll do it, and then they didn't. If we understand how critical, foundational, I mean, utterly life death obedience is, and understanding that we are engaged in a covenant with him through Messiah, that this covenant that he made, he brings not a new covenant, brings the true form of his covenant to the people through Messiah. And he points it out in Ezekiel and Jeremiah, and what the nature of that covenant is. It's to take out the chiseled stone word and replace it with his Torah written on hearts of flesh, that we might be able to in turn live it, and not have it be a structure or a list of requirements outside of us understanding what his requirements are, connecting with that he is writing on our hearts, that we would produce life and be truly obedient to what he's called us to be.
Yeah. Lots to chew on there.
I think for me, it was I had a little different take on it this week. I think it's characteristic that, especially when we're going through things, when we're going through trials, you know, one of the big barriers from making progress in our journey from Exodus to Ingathering, as it were, is that there's a certain questioning of the nature of God that is so predictable, it's almost pathetic. But I think we have to be very cognizant of that. I mean, that's what I would suggest to people. Be very mindful of the fact that one of the most basic things that happens is there is a questioning of the character of God. There's a questioning of his innate goodness, of seeking our welfare, of questioning his love or his presence, even though, like, for the Israelites, it was right there. For us, as believers, we can't forget that the pillar of fire and the cloud by day is in us through the baptism of the Holy Spirit. He is literally more present than he was even in Israel. And he's more privy to our words, our actions, and our heart than what they experienced. They would have loved to trade. I mean, it's humbling to realize Moses would love to trade places with a believer who has the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, even though he obviously had a very intimate relationship with God and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. But we have been given such access because of the finished work of Messiah and yet we fall into the same patterns and we question God's goodness. We question where God's presence is and where is God in all this. And it's just a really lame but effective tactic that gets used against us. And like you said earlier too, we trip out a bit and we want an avatar, we want an intermediary, we want a golden calf, as it were. Because even the calf, if you notice, gets ascribed Jehovah's name. So it's not like they were trying to replace him, but it's also interesting that terminology of having gods before him and they place those gods before him. You know, I think we do the same thing because like idolatry is just trying to make God how we want him to be instead of who he is. And all this is reflected, I think, a lot in trying to adapt our own holidays or Christianize pagan stuff or whatever, because at its root, it's us trying to make God in the image that we want to fashion him instead of who he is. And I think that that's something that, especially in the coming times, we would do well to pay attention.
Okay, I was muted so as not to disturb. I was going to say, if anyone had anything else to say. Alyssa, did you have anything? Maybe Spencer, you haven't been around here for a while. Good to see you again. No pressure, obviously. While we're waiting to give somebody the opportunity to share, my grandson was circumcised today on the 8th day. Isn't that nice? That's a good thing. Covenant in action. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, it's Spencer Woods.
Just saying hello. I don't really have any comment, but
no
hello.
Comments? Okay.
No, man. Other than just reading through all of that, and when I hear covenant, just walking through stuff, regardless of our beliefs, and like what you said, Alan, about standing fast, man. It's just part of it where we've all been through stuff, and at some point in time, you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is, and what have you said, what have you done, and then what do you have to walk through, you know? And for me, like, I've always felt like I, had a pretty easy life, great parents, grew up in the church, been around God, had like fantastic influence my whole life, but still stuff happens, And at some point in time, all the colloquialisms, whether, you put your money where your mouth is, the rubber meets the road, et cetera, stuff happens and your faith is tested, and I wrote in the comment there, a lot of us have said, a lot of us have heard, how could the Jews, like, especially like in that section, like the parting of the Red Sea, and the pillar of fire and the smoke, and how could they stop and, go and build a calf, but it's like we do similar things and don't even realize what we're doing, and you even alluded to it earlier, Alan, about removing the golden calves from our lives that we may or may not know are there. And they literally, I was kind of questioning tonight, I've always been taught that it was fashion, and it says in the verse, God told Moses that they fashioned a calf. And then tonight, for the first time they were reading, I'm like, what if that calf did just pop out of there? And how just the thought of how quickly they pop up in our lives. And it's not this, sometimes it's something we build unintentionally. Then other times, man, it just pops up and it's there. And it's like, whoa, where'd that come from? Well, we did it, and whether it was instantaneous or took time doing it, it's there. But it was an interesting thing, because I've always kind of read that as sarcasm. It's like, oh, hey, no, it wasn't me. It just popped up there, and I don't know, maybe I've kind of said that a few times, like, man, where did that come from? Well, duh.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? You can hear me now. Yeah, I remember thinking I had beat, or I had victory over a certain thing, and then like 10 or 12 years later it showed up again, and it was like, hey, how's it going? Remember me? And I'm like, oh, it's like, I thought I'd gotten rid of you, man. That's why we have to be with situational awareness. We got to be vigilant. We constantly have to be on our toes, making sure, because this stuff, man, he's a sneaky little critter. How do you like that for a censoring? And he will just like, and you just got to wax on, wax off, It's got to be, because he wants to see you fall. And it's, no matter what, we have to stand firm. We can't allow ourselves.
Interesting.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry. I was just going to say that's an interesting word that you mentioned. Something happened about 3 weeks ago. I just feel like God's been saying that to me a lot recently, is that word vigilant. It had kind of disappeared. We talked about situational awareness and seeing stuff, but man, vigilance, like day in and day out and constantly watching and, not growing weary in that. But that word, I've heard it a lot over the last 3 weeks. And so I don't know if that, is as strong for everybody else, but it's huge right now for me and what's going on.
It's suggested that the enemy's going to attack when you're tired, right? When you're fatigued, when you're hungry, right? And when you're alone, outside of your normal. Those are the 3 times the enemy's going to come at you. I mean, he'll come at you at any time, but it's been suggested those are like 3 peak scenarios for him to come at you. And when you're, when you're being stupid. Oh man, it just came out like that. It just came out like this golden calf just came out like that. I love it.
It also brought them back to wanting to look back to Egypt. And God didn't want them to look back to Egypt. He wanted them looking forward to the promised land that he gave them. And they really thumbed their nose at God at that point. Not that they didn't further on down the road, but
Right.
that was definitely because the Egyptians worshipped all those gods, one of which was the calf, the bull, cow, whatever you call it. So they were just like, in a drunken stupor and thinking we want to go back to Egypt. And I think it saddened God as well, because he'd done so much for them, already. He'd killed their enemies right, in front of them or behind them, however you want to look at that.
Yeah.
And brought them to this place. Yeah, I think it angered him, and it also saddened him.
And to say that this was the God that brought you out after all that he had done, that's just like, that's shameful. That's very shameful. Yeah, it's rough. It can be rough sometimes, but
Where's the video?
Probably click that. Start video.
I think there's another thing that was going on with the golden calf too, is that when they were in Egypt and all the plagues were going on, they were still doing all the pagan worship. And he didn't discipline them. So they come out 50 days after the crossing, they get the Torah, they get the law given to them, or at least the 10 sayings and commandments. And they were told not to come up the mountain, but still nothing happened to them. So they made an agreement for Moses to go up and talk to him. Nothing happened. It was what they were familiar with. So they thought, hey, let's just go back to it, because he's not going to discipline us. He did all these great things, but he never disciplined us. And so they didn't think he was going to do anything. And that's, we have a wrong view of who God is. And I think we have to learn to fear him.
yeah.
We have to learn that there will be a day when we stand before him. And I fear that day. I hopefully it goes good, but I fear that day because, man, life is hard. It's really hard when you're stupid.
Yeah, and it would still be a little while before he would instruct them not to go out into the wilderness on their own and offer sacrifices to goat demons.
Right.
They were still doing that too for a while.
Right.
We talked about that a while ago.
It also gives me great peace to know that he's still working with me.
Yeah.
My heart is to serve him, but there's grace there.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I want to hear "Well done, good and faithful servant" really bad. I really do. And it's easy to just go, "Oh, I'm such a horrible son,"
Mm-hmm.
I go back. Hopefully, it's not a bad thing, but I always go back to what he said in 1992, and I know Alan, he's my son. I am like banking on that word, But I want to be a good steward. I don't want to be a 20, 30, 40. I don't want a 20, 30, 40 return on my investment. I want the whole enchilada. I want 80, 90, 100%. I want to be a really good, but that's the kind of guy I am. I want to be really good at what I do. I don't want to be half-assed, in anything I do in life, especially not this. This is far more important than anything I've ever set my hand to do. And I want to be really, really good at it. I want to be proficient. I want to be excellent. And I want to do it correctly, Yeah. Cool. Alyssa, when do you do?
The 18th.
Oh, you're still like 3 weeks away?
Yeah, I'm 37 weeks as of yesterday.
Okay, how come I thought you were like, maybe because Afrain just had one, maybe I thought you were just like due sooner.
She went a little bit early, so she was just over 3 weeks ahead of me. So her due date was this past Saturday. So I'll take a little bit early.
Yeah, well, everybody keep praying for Alyssa and Ian and Eitan and the new baby. Do you know what it is? Does it have a name?
have any. We don't know for sure. We have
Ah.
a couple that we're kind of leaning towards and praying about.
All right.
Even with Aton, I mean, we didn't find out with Aton if he was a boy or girl, but even with him, we had a couple of names and we kind of had to like meet him.
Right.
But
Right.
we'll,
Okay.
we're kind of leaning towards one.
Well,
So.
people are lifting up prayers for you guys, and cool. If no one has anything else, you can be dismissed. Blessings on you guys, on all of you, every single one of you. Blessings on you. If you can hear my voice, blessings on you. Protection, hedge, his mighty hedge of protection of his Holy Spirit over you, your finances, your health, your territory. In Jesus and Yeshua's mighty name. Hey, we will see you in the morning. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but hopefully it'll be a good one, right? Blessings.